Welcome to Figure Eight, where we feature inspiring stories of women entrepreneurs who have grown their businesses to 7 and 8 figures revenue. If you're in the mix of growing a bigger business, these stories are for you. Join us as we explore where the tough spots are, how to overcome them, and how to prepare yourself for the next portion of the climb. I'm your host, Julie Ellis. I'm an author, entrepreneur, and a growth and leadership coach who co-founded, grew, and exited an 8-figure business. This led me to exploring why some women achieve great things. And that led to my book, Big Gorgeous Goals. Let's explore the systems, processes, and people that help us grow our businesses to new heights. If you're interested in growing your business, this podcast will help. Now, let's get going. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Figure Eight podcast. Today, I have Marnie Rabinovitch Consky with me. She is the founder and CEO of Thigh Society, and they are the leading direct-to-consumer brand of size-inclusive, long-leg undergarment solutions to sweating, chafing, and modesty, designed to help women move through the world with comfort and confidence. Marnie built this business from the ground up. And like many of us, she started her business because she saw a problem in the world there was not a solution for. And she started the business without any real experience in consumer packaged goods or how to sell to you on the internet. She created the category known as shapewear, and her business has been featured all over the place. The Today Show in the US, Marilyn Dennis in Canada, lots of magazines you've heard of. And, I think it's really exciting when a brand takes flight like that and you get influencers who are talking about you and all the things. And I see you on social media, Marnie, talking about body confidence. I mean, we can have a whole conversation
Mhm.
about legging legs today. Um, but, what are real bodies like and how do we reject diet culture? And so before becoming an entrepreneur, you had a whole successful career doing something entirely different in recruiting and training. And so today I'm super interested to hear about your journey. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I'm so glad you were able to join me. And I'm so curious about, what was it that made you see the need for this product and how did you get started?
So, the big question, I have always had sweaty thighs. We're getting right into the TMI, right? Out the gate, right? I've always had thighs that touch, and I've always been someone that sweats a lot. And so, throughout my entire life, I did yo-yo diet for much of my teen years through to my 20s. But no matter what my weight was, my thighs always touched, and I always had thigh chafe. So in the summertime, as soon as the weather would warm up, and I love to wear skirts and dresses, I'd always have this struggle because I could never go bare-legged. I knew my thighs were going to chafe almost within 5 minutes of having sweat and friction with my thighs rubbing together. And so for all these years, I had worn a pair or two. I think I had two pairs, like a Nike and another old brand of like cotton ginny, for those of us who are of a certain generation that might remember that. I had some old black ratty bike shorts that I would put on underneath every dress and skirt that I owned in the summertime. And I just accepted this as a fact for so many years. Occasionally, I would try some creams. There's a lot of gels, creams, powders that runners use. But no matter what I tried, nothing worked. No matter what my weight was, I always got thigh chafing. So I had this issue of like, there has to be a better way. And that really came to me one day on one of the first days of summer when I was wearing a skirt for the first time to my workplace at the time, and went for a short walk at lunch and got so frustrated because my thighs were rubbing together. I had to run to the nearest Shoppers Drug Mart for any Canadians listening. Got some baby powder, waddled back to my office, literally like legs apart, trying to not make them touch, and made a huge mess. I was wearing a black dress. There was white powder everywhere. It was disastrous, and I just thought from that point forward, I was going to find something better. And it really wasn't my intention to start a business making anti-chafe shorts. I was more interested in finding a solution for my problem because I was convinced I just hadn't looked hard enough. There has to be something on the market, right? And so I spent the remainder of that summer looking on the internet, going to small boutiques and bra shops around Toronto, checking big department stores like the Bay, and ultimately couldn't find anything. I don't know if we have time for a quick story, but I do. I like to tell this quick story that I was at the Bay. Looking first in the women's section, couldn't find anything there that was long leg underwear. It was only shapewear. So I sort of, found my way to the men's department, men's underwear. And I was in a section where there's a brand of underwear that's actually a Canadian brand, I later learned, but they were stocked with a lot of long leg boxers. So I start, rummaging through, seeing what's there. And within a few minutes, I hear a little voice behind me, and it's one of the salespeople, or so I thought. Turns out she's a sales manager or a rep for this brand, and she was there to just check their check how their underwear had been laid out. And she whispers over in my ear. She comes over and she's like, "Excuse me, can I ask you, are you shopping for your boyfriend or for yourself?" And I was like, "Wait a minute, aha moment!" Like, I said, "What do you mean? Like, are women often here shopping for themselves?" She's like, "Oh yeah, people are always looking for some long underwear, to prevent legs rubbing and things like that." And I was like, "Okay, why is there not a women's underwear designed just to do that?" So, it was that and a combination of other conversations I had with retailers in Toronto who, I went to a couple of smaller bra fitting boutiques and said, "Do you ever get customers who are looking for this type of long leg underwear?" I want it to be lightweight, invisible, seamless, because anyone like me wearing these underwear wants to pretend we're not wearing any underwear, right? I get it. We want to feel like we're bare-legged, but we need that fabric coverage between our thighs. And the answers that I got from all of these different boutiques was always the same. Yes, we do get requests for this, and no, we don't have anything to recommend. And I really resented the fact that shapewear at the time was the only option served up to women. Like, sure, we'll give you an undergarment that will provide you with this fabric coverage between your thighs, but guess what? It's going to be super tight. So you're going to be suffocating in it, and you're going to be boiling hot and melting from overheating because these fabrics don't breathe. And so, condensing a lot of time into a very short description here, I basically quit my job at the end of that summer, which I'd been planning to do anyway because I was bored and needed a change. But spent the remaining 6 months of the year or so finding a factory, educating myself on how to make garments, like what is e-commerce, just being a real sponge and learning as much as I could on the internet, uh, reaching out to friends, parents, in a lot of cases, who had been working in apparel and manufacturing for their whole careers, asking for informational meetings, seeking out. There's some great not-for-profits that were in and around the GTA that were providing assistance to, fashion designers, which I clearly was not and have never identified as a fashion designer, but it was sort of a fashion adjacent and close enough for me as somebody outside the industry to get a handle on what do I need to know. And a lot of it was, trial by fire, just learning as I went. Ultimately came up with a prototype after I found a local factory here in Toronto. And it was around Christmas time that we got our first prototype of a shorty that was made of then bamboo spandex. And I was able to, I tried it myself, and then I ended up asking them to make a bunch more and paid for that in different sizes because I knew from the get-go that this was something that, a garment that a woman of any size would need. This was not an undergarment that should be relegated to certain sizes, body types, because chafing doesn't discriminate based on your size. And then had a bunch of users test across Canada and the US because this was around Jan to March. So it's pretty cold here in Canada, not really opportune conditions to
Not bare
test.
legs and skirts weather.
Not bare legs and skirts, unless you're lucky enough to go to, Mexico and all inclusive spring break. But yeah, I certainly gave it to friends who were traveling, gave it to people, friends of friends in Vegas, and collected feedback. And, I spent quite a bit of time in those, this was 2008 leading into 2009, testing, iterating, working with my factory to make some adjustments based on feedback. And ultimately we launched, I say we, but it was really me. I was a solopreneur back then, launched in July of 2009. So a full year and a month after I had the idea for the
Amazing.
undergarments. Yeah.
Yes, the me, myself, and I years of entrepreneurship.
Totally, exactly. Me, myself, and I, that's the team.
Yep. Yeah, excuse me while I put another hat on and answer your question.
Right? Exactly. Exactly. But I wouldn't trade that for the world. It really, knowing about all the different aspects of the business allowed me to be, and still allows me to be, I think, a better manager, a better CEO. I mean, now I'm definitely much more far removed from certain elements of the business, but even getting that groundwork for, like, I'll use email marketing as an example. Because I do mentor quite a few entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs, and they ask me, like, what do I need to know going into this? And one of my pieces of advice is, in this digital age, when you are going to need to do online marketing to reach your target market, if you're doing a service based business or a product based business, having a basic understanding of how email marketing works is going to serve you well. And even, like, how many all of us are, like, online consumers, right? Like, I shop online all the time, so we are all observers of what other brands are doing in order to capture our attention and capture our share of wallet. So paying attention, and you don't have to be an expert in email marketing, but you certainly should. It helps to understand and learn that, to see how you can tailor your correspondence, your communications, your advertising, and all that to your customers.
And also I think it's about, like, you could do lots of research and get really tied up in all the, like, complexities of things that you could do with email, which ends in you doing nothing because you're, like, paralyzed by the
Right.
wealth of information.
Yes, for sure. And that's something I think we'll probably get to later in this conversation. I think that's one of the roadblocks that a lot of people fall into, where they try to do too much.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So, how did you decide in those early days to become a direct to consumer brand as opposed to becoming a packaged good that's sold at department stores or lingerie shops or that
Hmm.
sort of thing?
Hmm. Good question. I think I inherently knew from some of those early conversations of speaking with, like I mentioned, like, people in my network who had had a career in retail, that retail to me seemed very scary. So when I say retail, I mean selling wholesale, right, to boutiques.
Mhm. It
um
is.
yeah, right. It's right, from your
Yep.
experience, it
Yep.
seems so scary and daunting and very complicated. I remember hearing, well, first of all, I remember that one of my first boutiques was a small bra shop at Yonge and Eglinton, and they've since moved, and I'm still in touch with the owner. She's wonderful. But I remember thinking, you know what? I think it's important for me to be in one bra fitting slash underwear specialty boutique per Canadian city, because these people, through a few of my conversations, they didn't seem to overcomplicate the process. They were educating me on, like, have you ever seen a sales order form? No, I hadn't. They were showing me, sort of, asking me questions about, do we have minimums that we can order? And this is sort of the price that we would expect you to sell these shorties to us for, because we need to sell them for this. So I was sort of learning on the ground, and had, some great partners in the early days. But I realized that working with, or trying to capture, an account like the Bay, for example, would require me, as a teeny tiny little business, to, put in place certain software and have certain payment terms and all of these things that I already had a bajillion things going on trying to launch the e-commerce side of things. I just didn't have the bandwidth, and I didn't want to get investors. That was a key point. I bootstrapped, and I still bootstrap this business all these years later. So knowing that money was tight, it was like, all right, I have to pick a lane, and I'm gonna stay with it. And so I decided that, even though direct to consumer would result in smaller orders, right? Because you're selling to one customer at a time, rather than a store who's going to buy 25 pairs, 50 pairs, who knows. I decided that that was my preferred route, because it gave me a little bit more focus and control over my marketing. I also, on the marketing side, knew that, well, what would happen if I wanted to offer my shorties on sale online? Would that rub my retailers the wrong way? Like, probably, right? They'd be like, what, can we offer this promotion in store? And wait a minute, we're not ready to put these on sale yet. And so essentially, and this is something, maybe it'll come up later in this conversation, I really work by the KISS principle: keep it simple, stupid. KISS. It is my guiding light. I am I am not a lazy entrepreneur by any means, but I am definitely someone who likes to keep things simple and streamlined. And I think that has a bad rap sometimes, because people simple equals bad, or simple equals less than, but simple equals focused, targeted, right? Like you can really concentrate your efforts in into what you're doing. So yeah, I wish I had a better answer. I wish I could say I intuited that, that was something that wouldn't work well for us. 'Cause I still think, we could probably double this business overnight by going into wholesale, but only now are we thinking about that.
Right. And
Only
now
now,
you've
14 years
got
later.
the revenue to support, because it is like starting another business. I think you're 100% right about that.
Yeah,
And now you've got the infrastructure and you've built the scaffolding where you could take financially make the investment, you could make a people investment, all those, things that you need in order to
totally.
make it successful.
Totally. Infrastructure people, and that's what I was thinking of at the time, thinking, I was the one knocking on doors. So there's no way I could have divided myself in half. I would have had to hire a sales rep, implement all of these new, in my mind anyways, new softwares, technology. Some of the payment terms were horrendous with some of the bigger retailers, which is very tough as a small business, especially when you're a bootstrap, because you have all this, you have to pay for the inventory and then you're not getting paid for it for a while. So it just felt like too much hassle for me. And I was still learning on the ground of how to sell online. And I thought, let's just stick to this. And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and back to the KISS theory,
yeah,
there you are, right? Keep it simple.
yeah,
And you and I've talked before about, I mean, how hyper focused you are, how you really live that keep it
yeah,
simple, stupid as like how you run your business,
I do.
which I love about it because, you're so focused on how many SKUs you have, what products you're selling, what your path to growth looks like what are the ways that has really benefited you, that hyper focus.
So I will say when I first started the business, um, I think it's worth noting to inspire anyone else listening that I heard from a lot of people that doing a one product business would be impossible. Like you could never scale a one product business. Never mind the naysayers who didn't believe in the idea for this product at all, but we could do a whole separate podcast just on that. um,
Yep, we
right.
could.
But I did get a lot of people saying there's no way you can scale. And I think that's a really like old school mentality that you need to have an entire catalog of products in order to build a business. I think that's actually, I got that advice from a lot of people who were not familiar with direct to consumer. This is back in the early days of e-commerce. They just didn't, they were playing by an old playbook, which was, well, you're not even going to be able to get into retail slash wholesale unless you have the shorties with a matching tank top or a matching bralette. And I was like, but I don't want to do bralettes and tank tops. Like I really want to, produce the best possible anti-chafe shorties. That now we call them, more multi-wear shorties because they have so many great usages beyond just chafe. But I really wanted to be the best in this category of underwear that we were essentially inventing. And I think that focus on just doing one thing and ignoring the naysayers and allowed us to keep iterating on the product to make our products at the best that they can be in terms of innovation, technology, fit, quality, all of that. It allowed us to stay really hyper focused on what our customers were looking for and what they wanted. And it allowed us to stand out in the market because we're the only brand, even now, that only does slip shorts. Like it's all we do. So I still think there's so much opportunity for us to continue on this path to growth with just shorties because we offer a very clear value proposition. We're not overcomplicating the business with making a million things, although I'm sure one day we will be making other other products that solve real problems. Um, and then, in terms of thinking about our SKUs, we really think about our products as solutions, and yes, we have SKUs. Sure, we have about 600 active SKUs right now. Um, yeah, so nothing, right? You know what it's like to manage a whole bunch of SKUs. Um, but we didn't start with 600, right? I started with um, one. I knew I wanted to make a black short because I felt like I was coming from those days of my black bicycle short, and then I wanted to make something a little bit lighter colored. So we had like a beigey skin tone. We had a white. And then we only had one leg length when we started. And it was only over time as we start to hear from customers, what did they like about it? What did they want? Where we started to slowly expand. But even for many years, we didn't have any colors in our product line. And again, that comes back to keep it simple, stupid. I didn't want to get investors. I wanted to just not have to worry about another seat at the table telling me, you have to discount this month and offer all these sales because you're not meeting your sales targets, or we want you to go in this direction. I wanted to have complete autonomy over those decisions. And so it meant, sort of uh, doing and saying a lot of the same things, repeating the same things over and over again, but we are always attracting a new audience and we are always acquiring new customers. So yeah, I think, it also, I haven't mentioned this to this point. I can't believe this, but it also allowed us to stay really true to our mission, really, which was about helping people feel comfortable and confident in the skin that they're in, and working to, demystify and destigmatize sweating, basically, because that's ultimately what chafe is. So yeah, I wouldn't, if I could go back, I would do it the same. I wouldn't change it.
No. And I am sort of fascinated and also, I mean, here you've been in business for quite a while now and taking away the stigma
Yep.
and demystifying.
Yep.
But it's still a big topic of conversation, you
It
know.
is. I mean, it's come a long way. When I first started, Instagram was still in its infancy. And there were like bloggers then who had blogs. They were, I mean, the bloggers still exist today, but now they've sort of morphed into influencers on Instagram, Facebook, so TikTok. And even typing in the words anti-chafe or thigh chafe, like you didn't get a lot of results on Google back in the day. So one of the advantages, I think, we had like a bit of a first mover advantage in that sense, because we were talking about it. We were using that keyword in a lot of our marketing on our website and our emails, et cetera, et cetera. And it's been incredible for me to watch over the last almost 15 years, that this term is coming into common parlance. People are using the term people understand what chafing means now. I used to call it chub rub. I know that that term sort of rubs people the wrong way, pun intended, I guess. um, I always have used it with my friends as a bit of a term of endearment, because, we see weight as neutral, and, if I have a bit of chub on my thighs, that's just the way it is, and it's going to rub together. And that's, I call it chub rub. And that's sort of something I've always like laughed about. But, it is amazing to know that we've had some sort of influence, I think, on opening up the conversation and letting people feel comfortable talking about a perfectly normal skin condition. When I first started, something I think I skipped over at the beginning of this storytelling is that when I was doing my market research, I only was able to find a few companies, and they were European companies who were catering to only plus sizes, making like a bloomer type of underwear that was purely cotton. And that was their offering to prevent thigh chafe. And I really knew, I mean, I knew as a person who suffered from thigh chafe that was, a big miss, because number one, people of all sizes can experience thigh chafe. And number two, nobody needs a cotton long underwear. Cotton absorbs moisture like crazy. And the last thing you want is that water, that sweat sitting on your skin, because that's just what's going to, increase the chance of a rash.
Yeah. I think people also don't want something that's visible, right? And that's one of the things that's so great about your product is it's virtually invisible when you're wearing
Totally. I mean, not to make this a commercial for Thigh Society,
it.
but I mean,
Go ahead.
right? I mean, I was the target customer. I designed these for me, and I was like, hey, if other people are going to buy these, so much the better. But I knew I wanted something that was lightweight, invisible, seam free. Even things like, people don't think about this, but I knew, having worn those old bike shorts, they had a seam right down the center of the inner thigh, which is going to exacerbate chafing, because not only are your thighs sweating in that area, but the abrasion of the actual seam and thread can be an irritant. And so when we were designing these, when me and my then pattern maker, and I've worked with many designers over the years, and we have a great team of designers now, the starting point was always to eliminate that center seam, because big brands, I think, who are looking to make something quickly and just cheaply and get it onto the market, aren't going to be thinking about some of these little details that make a difference. But I was, because I knew I wanted these to work better than anything else that I could find out there. So, we actually made the seams off center, so they're not in the center coming down your thighs. So when you wear them, you still won't feel the seam, won't show, they're flat. You won't see them under clothing, and you also won't have that abrasion. rubbing on your thighs. Plus, we don't use an elastic. We, knit the elastic in. We use 360-degree stretch fabric that we make ourselves. Our fabrics are a combination of a lot of testing and experimentation with different yarns and spandexes to see what works and performs the best. And we only use the highest quality yarn because we want these to last a long time. So yeah, fundamentally, it's, I am at the heart of this business, not only as the CEO, but as the customer. I wear these. I want to feel like I'm wearing nothing, and I want these to serve so many purposes beyond just for chafe, and they do.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Now, you talking about spinning your own yarn to make your own fabric
Yeah.
versus those first ones that were
Yep.
like a bamboo
Yep.
stretch type of material. So, let's talk about scaling up,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So, you start in one place and now you're in a very different place.
Yes.
When did you kind of feel the first pain points of, oh, like we're hitting a ceiling and now I'm going to have to pivot? Because
Mhm.
you're now in the multi eights
Yeah.
in terms of revenue and coming all the way from getting to the first million and then
Mhm.
getting to where you are now, like those are all huge jumps.
They are. They are. Um, so let's see. I guess I could think of, three big jumps at different stages of the business. The first was when we moved away from cut and sew manufacturing, which is where I started, to seamless manufacturing. And I started because, well, when I started, I didn't have the money or the volume, or the proof of concept to go out and make my own fabric. And I didn't even know, to be honest with you, that seamless knitting existed back then. I only knew about cut and sew. And so I knew I didn't want to, outlay tons and tons of cash on custom fabric. So I had to buy what was available to me. So, and I recommend this to people just starting out, is there's lots of fabric importers that you can find in your, in your city, in your state. There usually nowadays it's possible to find someone that's importing bolts of fabric. Sometimes they may be importing for much bigger brands, so you can sort of piggyback on some of those orders. And so after I would say when I started in 2009 and it was 2014 or 2013, because it took about a year to develop, but around 2013, 2014, I became aware of this seamless knitting, which is basically knitting tubes of fabric that have no seams and 360-degree stretch on these very specific machines by Santoni, which is a brand of seamless knitting machines. And I became aware of this through a factory in Montreal. I was manufacturing in Toronto, and I thought, okay, well, um, this type of seamless knitting can offer a superior fit for the garment that I'm trying to make, because essentially it allowed me to cut back on seams, add more stretch, reduce the need to have an elastic in the waistband, and had all these amazing benefits for the end customer. So I moved my manufacturing at that point over to Seamless Knit in Montreal, which is where we were from 2014 to about 2018. And so 2018, we were scaling, we were getting bigger. I think we had crossed the $1 million mark by then, because I had quit my full-time job in 2016. And then there was a bit of a confluence of factors. One, I met a designer who was incredibly talented, who's still with us today, who had experience with seamless knitting and suggested that there could be a lot of innovation to be found overseas. Number two, we wanted to expand our size range, and our Montreal factory did not have extra machinery that would allow us to go up in size. And their business was winding down because so much of the local and domestic manufacturing industry was just going offshore at that time. And so the writing was a bit on the wall, like, this isn't sustainable. If we want to scale and grow, we're missing a bunch of key factors here that are going to, set us up for success in that regard. And so we spent that year basically just working with our a manufacturer in China, and we ultimately ended up going to visit in 20, I think it was 2018. I may be mixing up 2017 and 18, but it was definitely not 2019, because we know the pandemic happened shortly after that. We weren't there. But yeah, that was another marker, because for all the reasons I just mentioned of why it was time, it just made sense. It wasn't, notice how I didn't even talk about cost. I mean, we were able to save a few cents on the dollar for sure by going overseas, but I don't think the difference at that size of our business, at that point when we were, the order quantities we had to put into this larger Asian manufacturer, the savings weren't huge because we still had to import and there's freight charges and you're going to air freight or ocean freight and then duties and customs and warehousing and all of that. So it really wasn't a cost motivator at that time. I think now, in the third jump, is where we realize we need multiple suppliers. We can't be at our stage of growth relying on one manufacturer, because we're still a small business when you think of us compared to really, really large players in the underwear business. And if they're placing orders that are 3, 4, 5, 6 times the size of ours, our orders could get shunted out and pushed down the line, which could hurt our business immensely and could potentially destroy our business if we don't get our inventory on time. So the thinking was, let's start exploring some other manufacturing partners just to hedge our risk. And we've also been able over the years working with these trusted partners, or our one trusted partner anyways, for the most of the time, to negotiate better volume discounts and whatnot over time. As our business scales. So I think you have to take it slow. I think a lot of people think they have to start right away with going overseas. I pushed it as long as we could to go overseas. I really didn't want to stop manufacturing domestically, and we looked at some creative options. If I'm being totally transparent here, like maybe we were going to buy the factory in Montreal. Maybe we are going to invest in new equipment, but financially, it just didn't make sense for us at the time. And the innovation was really it was clear to us that the innovation was happening elsewhere.
Elsewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
Those are big decisions to
they are.
make though, as you're like, they feel scary.
Oh yeah,
Definitely.
terrifying,
Yeah. Yeah.
terrifying.
And so I know that one of the powerful things for you has been finding the right people to add to your team
Yep.
as you have gone through all of these major changes in
Yes.
the business.
Yep.
Um, how has that helped you bring your vision to fruition?
So, oh my God, there's so many things I want to say about that. So our team is comprised of all freelance part-time contractors. And again, thinking back to the KISS principle, I started this business realizing that I wanted to stay hyper-focused. And I also at the same time wanted to keep things really simple and streamlined. I had a background in human resources. But from a perspective of advising CEOs and senior leadership about how to keep employees happy and satisfied in their career. And I knew that it was going to take a lot of work to keep employees motivated, excited, engaged. And I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that and run the business at the same time. I'm going to have to hire an HR director. And that doesn't seem like a smart use of my resources, knowing that I wanted to bootstrap and most of my cash was going to be tied up in inventory and marketing. And so I set out with the intention of bringing on subject matter experts who, which I think I borrowed a little bit from my consulting background, where I could hire experts in their fields who could come in and own a piece of work. And then I wouldn't have to worry about micromanaging them. I would know that they had already found their sweet spot, their area of flow where they like to work in, and really give them autonomy in their work and allow them to bring their value to the business.
I think there's
Um,
something too about like you didn't need a full-time person with
no,
that kind of expertise. So you could put together a bunch of experts and get actually better results, better outcomes than if you hired one person who was trying to do everything with general experience.
exactly, exactly. And there's different ways to do it. I don't think there's a one right way. I just knew like I I didn't want I loved working from home. I had experience back in like Y2K working from home for a multinational consulting firm. So I knew that this notion of remote work was very doable. This was, 2009 and my first, I brought on a social media person probably in 2012, but this concept of remote work isn't new. It's just that the pandemic of the last few years has normalized remote work in a way that we never really, it accelerated the pace at which people were willing to accept that as the norm. Um, and so, yeah, I think I realized from the get-go that that was an approach I preferred in terms of how I wanted to work, my working style. And then how I grew my team was really a combination of luck and my network, and searching on LinkedIn, using LinkedIn as a tool to find other people and asking for referrals from other founders that I knew. And so I was very fortunate through my network to be able to find our now CFO, COO, who I was connected to through a professor at the University of Toronto, because I was working full time on the business for 7 years before I quit that job and went full time on Thigh Society. And so I didn't make a secret about having this business on the side, but I definitely made it clear, that this was, that my job as an MBA career coach was my full time priority. And this was my sort of side hobby. I didn't even call it a side hustle. Because quite frankly, I wasn't working 80 hours a week, right? I really was really about trying to I think I knew even then that I wanted to have a life at the same time as enjoy myself while growing and learning about how to run a business and how to run this business. So I met our CFO, COO, who came on initially as a mentor, and then her role evolved, slowly as a fractional CFO. And then she ended up taking over the years some of my operations responsibilities, so that she's now our joint COO as well. And you never know where you're going to meet somebody. Our CMO currently actually is also fractional. And I met her very serendipitously. She was calling me to do a reference for another vendor that we were working with. And through the course of our conversation, she revealed that she was a fractional CMO. And we started talking about what her services were, what kind of value she could offer. And then she ended up doing an audit for us, and we ended up bringing her on. And, she actually ended up, funny enough, at the time when she joined, we still joke about this today, 3, 4 years later, she ended up, encouraging me to like fire my entire team at the time. We had a lot of agency partners. We were working with an email agency. We were working with a Facebook ads agency. And she basically came in and was like, nope, they have to go. They have to go. Because she felt that we were not of necessarily the size at that point of a business that we needed an agency, and that we could find freelancers who were subject matter experts who would work harder for us or just as hard, um, with better results. And I mean, back to something you just said earlier, I think the reality is, if we look at, corporate world, a lot of people, and there's a study, I don't have the exact source of it, but I read somewhere once that most people at their jobs, in a corporate job where they go into the office and work, they're only productive like 50% of the time. So if you have somebody working 40 hours a week, they're only really working and doing their work in 20 hours. So my attitude was always, I don't care if somebody's working at 2 a.m., as long as they get the job done. And I don't care where they are in the world. If they show up to the meetings, I don't mind. I don't care if you're in Bali, which some of our team members have been in and worked from, right? I don't care what time of day it is. Just show up and get the work done. And so, and I think, again, the pandemic normalized a lot of this thinking. But I knew from having worked remotely in my past careers, and I just believed in, I believed in people and their work ethic. And that's how we hire to this day, is people with a strong work ethic, who have integrity and take a lot of pride in their work, who want to make a difference, and who are, motivated and aligned to our vision and our brand, and have value to add in terms of what they bring to the table.
That's a really great way of looking at it, I think. And, I mean, at Mabel's Labels, we had a results only work environment, which
Mhm.
means that it was about work product, not
Right.
where in the world you were or
Right.
how you were planning to do that work. It was about delivering.
I love that.
And it was a really successful model.
Yeah, it is. It can be, right? Like, why not?
Yeah. 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 So that's really great. And so now what's next for Marnie and Thigh Society? What does the future hold in store for you as a business and for you personally?
I mean, well, for this year, it's right now, as we're recording this, it's early days of 2024. So we have some pretty big growth targets, as we always do, for the year ahead. We recently started advertising in Australia. So I had sold in Australia as early as 2009, actually, but we never really focused any of our marketing and advertising efforts online towards Australia. But it makes a nice complement to our seasonality. Even though people wear our shorties all year round, if we think about hot weather and sweating in North America, that's usually concentrated between, April and August. So focusing on Australia, which has been something we've been doing for the last couple of months over here. We have some new products that are coming down the pipe, still within our shorty line. I hope to get a little bit more in front of the brand on socials. It's one of my weak points. I always, it seems to be one of my one of the parts of my day that gets shunted off to the next day on my to-do list. Like, oh yeah, I should do a reel. And it's funny you started this with talking about legging legs, which we shouldn't even give more attention to because it's such a horrible, awful trend that I hope will be a distant memory very soon. But I do enjoy, I enjoy social media and being to some extent being able to, well, I don't enjoy necessarily being the face of the brand because I always feel like there are so many other people behind me at Thigh Society that are doing such incredible work. And I kind of resent that like glorification of the founder or CEO. But I am at the same time so passionate about our mission and our values that I feel like if people want to listen to me, I could talk all day about that. And I can produce content on that all day long on social. So that's definitely a goal of mine for this year. And we're continuing to unlock more of these amazing use cases for our shorties, which we've been doing for the last few years. I mean, largely led by our customers who are like, these shorts are amazing for sleeping. They're amazing for hot flashes. They're amazing for working out in. I wear them underneath my unlined pants. I wear them underneath my ski pants. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Like, maternity as well, a whole other market that we hadn't even initially started out thinking, but there's nothing different about our shorts that make them maternity, but they're so stretchy and the fabric is such high quality that it doesn't bag or sag after you wear it. So you're not ever going to get, like, if you're thinking about someone who's pregnant and whose baby bump's growing, that those shorts are going to grow with you and you can even wear them after you give birth. So just
And
continuing
about
to
how
unlock
sensitive
that.
and uncomfortable your skin can get too.
Sensitive, uncomfortable, and I mean, people wear them post-surgery, like after any sort of abdominal surgery, or people with sensitive skin conditions, or people with sensory issues, just as a base layer underneath their clothes. I mean, it's so incredible. And if you think about it, like, why didn't women have long leg underwear until we came along? Like, no one questions why men need long leg underwear under their jeans. Nobody's ever asked that question. So it's high time that women have access to choice, right? Access to more choices. And so, yeah, we're happy to give that to people. And I'm happy to keep, saying what I need to say in order to make people realize, number one, that, these underwear, if you need to wear these underwear because you sweat, that's fine. It has nothing to do with your body. Your body's the least interesting thing about you. And as a woman, having fallen victim to diet culture for so many years, to really stand up and say, women are capable of so much. And if we didn't have our attention divested and diverted on, calorie counting and obsessing over food and our weight and how our body looks, imagine what we could do with all of that mental energy. We could put that towards so many more productive endeavors. So that's where my passions are. It's just reminding women that we are so much more than our bodies.
Good. And I'm so thankful that you're out there promoting that and that world domination is in your sights,
Yeah.
and you're going to
World
keep talking about
domination.
it. Woohoo.
Woohoo! Yes, that's obviously our goal, right? To become a household name and get more women introduced to Thigh Society and maybe eventually do a men's line, right? There's nothing gender specific about our shorties. And we do have a lot of people, a lot of men coming to us asking if they could wear our shorts, and a lot of women saying to us, hey, I couldn't find my Thigh Societies and I found them in my husband's laundry pile. So, yes,
Oh, that's
definitely.
all the ideas that come from opportunities.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story. It was so great to listen to your journey and hear about the lessons that you've learned. And I'm wishing you all the success as you grow this business even bigger.
Thanks so much, Julie.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please remember to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you won't miss any episodes. Figure 8 isn't just a podcast. It's a way of seeing the big, gorgeous goals of women entrepreneurs coming to life. If you're interested in learning more, you can find my book, Big Gorgeous Goals, on Amazon anywhere you might live. For more about my growth and leadership training programs, visit www.julieellis.ca to see how we might work together. Read my blog or sign up to get your free diagnostic. Are you ready for growth? Once again, that's www.julieellis.ca. When we work together, we all win. See you again soon for another episode of Figure 8.